widely.
The Parliamentary Joint Committee on Defence and Internal Affairs and the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs has kick-started scrutiny over the protection of the Sovereignty Bill 2026. The Minister of State for Internal Affairs, David Muhoozi, and the Attorney General Kiryowa Kiwanuka appeared before the Joint Committee to defend the controversial bill, which has so far attracted high criticism from a section of the public.
This clause prohibits a person or agent of a foreigner from engaging in any activity, soliciting or receiving or obtaining any assistance from a foreigner to sponsor or organize a meeting or any function with the aim of promoting the foreign policy in Uganda that has not been adopted by Cabinet as the government policy.
At a broader level, the bill will streamline how civil society, foreign-funded entities, and other actors engage with government institutions. The intended social consequence is not to prohibit lawful cooperation, but to ensure that such cooperation takes place in a transparent, accountable, and regulated manner that does not undermine the sovereignty of the people of Uganda.
AG Kiryowa Kiwanuka urged the MPs to dwell much on the scope of the activities which the intended legislation seeks to criminalize, including the activities that act on the interests of foreigners. Whoever receives funding to support activities in the interest of foreigners shall be required to register as an agent of foreigners. However, such a person or business shall comply with the criminalized activities.
If a person receives funding from a foreigner and it is meant for these purposes, it is incumbent upon government, if they intend to prosecute that person under this law, to get the evidence to confirm that that person actually brought those funds for that purpose. And if they cannot, then the law will not be held against that person.
You can even receive money from outside Uganda, but for interests of Uganda, that's not a problem. But if you receive money to promote an interest of a foreigner, that's where you have to register.
The definition of a foreigner has been applied to anyone who carries out any activity that the bill criminalizes. However, some MPs remained puzzled.
If we had said agent of a foreigner and left it at that, then everything in the act you'd just be reading agent. But we are saying no. For you to call someone an agent of a foreigner, for avoidance of doubt, if you're not clear, they must do these things. If they don't do these things, they are not agents of foreigners for purposes of this act.
The officials were tasked to explain the circumstances that could qualify a Ugandan living abroad to be a foreigner.
We are saying, for example, if a Ugandan citizen has $100,000 and is in America or in Sweden or in another country outside Uganda, and he decides to spend that money to support his local MP in an election, that's not an action of a foreigner. That's him acting for himself. But if that Ugandan had $100,000 and in concert with foreigners said, let us install a particular MPX for purposes of doing this activity, that person becomes an agent of a foreigner.
The Attorney General has clarified the question of duplication of laws, citing that the country has no regulations against the interests of foreigners. This follows the outcry that the existing legal framework could be empowered to accommodate the new proposals.
All the other laws have been regulating, for example, under the Financial Institutions Act and under the Financial Intelligence Authority law. They talk of declaration of funds you have received from outside Uganda, declare the source, but they don't talk about foreign interest.
In the new legislation, the qualified parties registered by the specified department cannot receive more than 400 million shillings without permission from the minister. Some MPs project corruption tendencies, hence raising a red flag. The protection of the Sovereignty Bill 2026 has attracted special attention, moving at a marathon speed, hence raising suspicions. Recently, Parliament collapsed several bills, citing the time factor as the 11th Parliament polishes its operations. If approved, it will be an obligation for every Ugandan to promote the sovereignty of the people of Uganda, and all the activities of the government shall be conducted in such a manner that promotes the interests of Uganda. The Protection of the Sovereignty Bill 2026 does not prohibit foreign funding or cross-border transfer of money, but rather intends to regulate foreign funding in order to safeguard what has been described as Uganda's sovereignty. Daniel Mugoya, Gloria Gwitabinji, UBC News.
And Parliament is in session, so don't worry, Dr. Gilbert Olanya, we are doing